allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Do we have any comments from the public today? Seeing none, we'll move on. Any corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar? Paul, Melanie, any? Board members, anything you'd like to pull from consent? All right, I'd entertain a motion then.
I'll move to adopt the consent calendar.
We don't need discussion on that.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. And there were no items brought forward, so that takes us to item 6A. And that one is Andrew.
Good afternoon, President Peterson and directors of the board. At the February 1st, 2024 board meeting, members of the board expressed desire to become subject to the provisions of the California Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act procedure, also called TUPCA or UPCA, to allow for a more streamlined approach to public works construction projects. In order to ensure adherence and compliance with the Act, staff has prepared the necessary resolutions, ordinance, and policies, which will be in effect July 6, 2024. Are there any questions?
Board members, any questions on this? Appreciate you bringing this back. Okay.
Yeah, I read through it. It looks pretty clear to me. I thought we were going to 200,000 and under for in-house, but it looks like it's 60K and under.
It's 60K and under.
Yeah.
The 200 is a separate threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess within the context of the 60K, is that still, I guess, would we have to compete internally, like against somebody else? Just go for it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, what's your desired action?
It is requested that the board approve Resolution 328124, electing to become subject to the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Procedures, enact ordinance number 59024, which adds new Administrative Code Section 8, Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act, and approve the Public Works Construction Purchasing Policy, and approve the Maintenance and Non-Public Works Purchasing Policy.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Is there any?
Chris, do you want to comment on this in any way, and just like how this may or may not impact staff in any way, or
no? I'd like to say thank you for taking the time to approve this and at least take a look at it.
Yeah.
The 60,000, we're okay with that because a lot of the things that we do out in the field we can consider maintenance, correct?
Yeah.
And that seems to be a little bit different category than the 60,000, which opens up a lot of doors for all of us, I believe.
Great. And then I guess, do we have a notion from our capital improvement program, like, is there anything that kind of falls in line with that 60K and under?
All right, very little.
Very little.
All right. It would be more like things coming up that need to be addressed.
Right.
Yeah, that aren't an actual emergency, but we still save money by doing it in-house.
And I think the informal bidding up to 200,000 for public works, that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah.
Because we do have things kind of in that size range that are, you know, smaller than we'd like to have to put together a whole formal bid package, because that takes a lot of time. So this will really streamline that.
One other thing I would like to add is I know that Heidi, our purchasing agent, attended a webinar yesterday, and already talking about increasing some of these thresholds, so the 60 increasing it to $70,000, and then the informal bidding threshold up to 220. It's not enacted yet, but there are discussions in regard to that, so it looks like they may be increasing some of those.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, let's call the question. Very good. Thank you, Andrea. Let's go to item 16, Megan Colby.
Good afternoon, Directors. I'm here to request approval for the 2024 Baseline Cathodic Protection Survey and Corrosion Evaluation Planning Project. So, long one. So just a little background on this. Several of the district's pipelines, tanks, sewer pump stations, and some other significant facilities have been installed with corrosion test stations. And some of these facilities have cathodic protection or CP systems. And they're intended to protect and monitor the condition of the infrastructure facilities. We haven't done the best job of keeping up on the testing and maintenance of these facilities. And so the intent of this project is to bring us back into line with that. So in March this year, we solicited proposals from two of the firms on our on-call corrosion engineering services list to perform this work. And after staff reviewed the proposals, we got two proposals submitted. DNA was selected as the most qualified consultant. So just a little background on this project. The project will provide an outline for the district on how to proceed with corrosion protection system-wide. We'll be doing testing and maintenance on the facilities that we currently have, and then also looking at how to implement a cathodic protection a corrosion protection program long-term, and like what does that inspection schedule look like and how do we staff it. Some of the facilities we'll be looking at, we have 5 tanks that still have impressed current CP systems, so we'll be doing testing and adjustments if possible on those, or recommendations for converting those to a galvanic system. We'll be looking at all 3 of our export pipelines. These are critical pipelines in our system. So the A and the B line, the A line has a small section that is cathodically protected right now, and then the rest of the A and B line have corrosion test stations. So they'll be looking at those test stations, and then we'll be looking at doing electrical continuity along both pipelines in case we do want to add cathodic protection in the future. And then on the C line, we'll be reviewing all of the condition assessment work we've done in the past. It's been several years. It's been at least 12 years since we've done any cathodic condition assessment, and it was only about 20% of that pipeline. So we'll be developing a plan to assess the rest of the pipeline. What does that look like? What support do we need from district staff? And then what kind of technologies can we use to not hopefully take it out of service to do the condition assessment? We'll be doing condition assessment planning on our sewer force mains. Most of these were constructed in the 60s, and we've never done any condition assessment on them. And then we have a cathodic protection on the filter vessels of this wastewater treatment plant. And then, like I said, developing a full corrosion protection program that'll address design, maintenance, and monitoring of corrosion control facilities, and then looking at how we staff that. Do we do everything in-house with district staff? Do we do a hybrid with consultant support, or do we just farm everything out? So we'll be looking at a business case evaluation on that. That's kind of the project. There's a lot in it. The detailed scope of work was attached to the agenda item, but I can answer any questions if you guys have any.
Just really quick, just for clarification. So this is all sorts of different facilities.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both water and sewer.
Water and sewer
Mm-hmm.
as well. Okay. How does it fit in with the asset management planning that's been going on? Is it because that long-term plan seems like it would fit right in terms of, you know?
This is definitely a component of asset management, and as we continue to develop our asset management program, this falls right in line with it, and it will be incorporated.
Okay. Any other questions, board members?
No, very comprehensive. This is being brought forth kind of in alignment with, the overall asset management program for maintaining our system, keeping costs low. I think these are the pivotal items, and I think this is great.
And to our capital business program, the asset management. Yes. Yeah. We have any projects that come out of this, they'll be identified in CIP.
Let's the desired action?
Sure. Number one is to approve the proposed scope of work from DNA Consulting Engineers for the 2024 Baseline Cathodic Protection Survey and Corrosion Evaluation Planning Project. And two, authorize the general manager to execute task order number one to the Master Services Agreement with DNA Consulting Engineers in the amount of $244,762.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion on the board? Any public comment on this? Let's call the vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Let's go to item 6C, Chris Stanley.
Good afternoon. Luther Pass. A few weeks ago, we lost a 1,000-horse motor. And little background, the station at full capacity has two 700-horse pumps and motors and two 1,000-horse pumps and motors. We lost a lead to it, so we were sent into Codell, which is a firm that we evidently use quite a bit. They're really good at getting motors and things like that fixed for us. Once they started tearing into it, they found out that there was more than just a bad lead. Basically what happened is the lead to it fried, but when they tore it apart, they saw that there was excessive heat inside of the motor too. Now, I asked them for some quotes on what exactly to fix it the way it is, quotes to rebuild it, and what quotes would be for a new one. And I attached it to the agenda there. I hope you had a chance to look. Long story short is we're down right now one 1,000-horse pump and motor and one 700-horse pump and motor. And not ideal, especially coming in the 4th of July, the busy season. If we were to lose one of those motors right now, we would be in a lot of trouble. We would not be able to pump out everything coming in at the same time. We'd end up falling behind. So this is really imperative to get something moving right away. The estimates here was $14,000 just to repair the lead. They won't warranty it. They'll give it back. It can last 5 days. It can last 5 years. But it's not really a chance we want to take at this point. The second one that we're really looking at, or we'd like to have approved, is basically rebuild the motor. And they'll do it on overtime, which is going to be a little bit more costly, but given the circumstances we're under, it's definitely worth it. And they're trying to shoot to have it back in 3 weeks, which is hopefully prior to 4th of July is what we're shooting for. 4th of July is going to be a big factor, I guess I would say. You'll also see where they could basically rebuild the motor too, but on regular time for that 6 to 8 weeks out. We don't have 6 to 8 weeks. A new motor is around $100,000. That would be the ideal way to go, but we can't wait 15 to 18 weeks to get it at the rate we're going. Now, if you do remember, we had pump 2, the 700 horse, about a year ago that was rebuilt. We put it in, and it ended up failing. That was gone for almost a year. We just got it back a few weeks ago. So we hooked it all up, fired it up, and we wanted to run it for a couple of days. We wanted to see if it actually worked, with any problems. But we're experiencing the vibration problem again. After about several hours, the vibration was up what we call 26. And I think it was 26 per second vibrating. That's technical stuff. But after 24 hours or so of running in, we were up around 30. 35, I believe, is the alarm for it, right? And I was told that if we continue to run it, we can be jeopardizing the rebuild and jeopardizing the motor. So as we speak right now, FlowServe is up here out of Luther, and they're doing a vibration analysis on that motor, or that pump. We've been dealing with this for a while, so we're just a process of elimination. But basically what I'm saying is that 700 horse we can only run in an emergency if we have to, and we're still taking a chance. But what I would do if we lost number 2, the 700 horse, what we can do is we can take that pump out, take this new pump and put it over there. That's what we did when we lost number 2. Number 1 was having a vibration issue, so we wanted to see what would happen if we put the pump over on station 2. We did, and it's been there ever since and working just fine. So we do have a backup 700, but we're back into the corner, to be honest with you. The quickest way to get back up to where we feel comfortable and be able to sleep at night is if you approve the rebuilding of the motor on the overtime portion. I'm glad to answer any questions if you have any. When I can't, I've got an expert sitting here in the crowd that helps me.
Board member questions?
I think the immediate thought is the 700 was rebuilt and is having issues, and so we're now rebuilding another motor. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's logical inference with what's different.
Yeah, the 700 horse was factory defects, is what we think a lot of it was. It was a pulled stud, some of the rotating element was rubbing on the casing. So a little bit of that, or a lot of that was just factory defect that we were seeing on the 700. And that was new. I'm sorry, I think I said rebuilt. That's a new pump that we had manufactured. My mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, there's basically only, what, $10,000, $13,000 difference to a new motor compared to rebuild. And I agree, I would prefer to go with a new motor, maybe have this one rebuilt and put on the shelf as a spare, because we're getting it's getting kind of pressing that we have to keep struggling every time something goes out. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the lead time for things being delivered, trying to get things done, where we're experiencing it with everything, all the way down to curb stops. From what I understand about Codell, they're pretty reputable. We've had a lot of good luck with them. They're doing their best to get it back by 4th of July. In the situation we're in, I think that's a chance that I'd be willing to take at this point with, you know, the busy season coming in. I mean, right now we're at 3 MGD a day, Aaron. And when it starts getting busier, what do we have, around 5 or something? Around 5, and we won't be able to keep up. That's kind of where we're stuck at, actually. I would love to be able to get a brand new motor in, you know, 3 or 4 weeks and be able to put that in, but it's just not gonna happen.
For me, it seems like we're constantly dealing with the situation out there, and if there's any way to kind of anticipate or be ready to swap out or change up parts or just have some stuff on shelf. I mean, to me, it seems to me like we should go ahead and approve this particular request, but I think maybe come back and have more of a kind of a master plan for kind of addressing that and remedying.
What's that master plan already? If you'd like to hear it.
Well, I'd like to understand, you can come back and
we're up to here too. I understand completely what you're saying.
I'd love to hear it, actually. Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
The master plan that I think should happen is I would like to see an extra 1,000 horse motor and pump sitting on the shelf. I would like to see a 700 horse motor and pump sitting on the shelf.
Well, I guess let's bring that forward at another meeting. We're talking about an operation.
I'd like to talk about that more in operations and get the long-term plan, because I think, you know, here we are, you know, emergency after emergency out there. I agree we're going to have to approve this today. I really would like to push them to get it for July 4th. You know, the extra surcharge, I mean, after July 4th, would we be able to handle it? Like, if it didn't get delivered, like, I'm just trying to weigh, like,
If it didn't get delivered and we had no issues with the 1,000 and 700 horse that we have now, and if we can figure out some kind of vibration issue with number 1, I think we'd be okay through 4th of July if we had the 3, right?
We'd be right on the edge.
Yeah.
So we peak around 5 to 5.5 MGD. And so with the 700 and 1,000, you're looking around, it's right around 5.2 MGD. So the risk, though, is say we don't rush this, we don't get it, and then we do the AP plan, right? And so we end up losing let's say we lost the 700. Basically, 1 to 2 million gallons a day we have to send to the ERBs. You have 26 days of storage.
So just for full transparency, we met on this last week, and we anticipated the board would be in favor of moving forward with this option, and so we directed them to start the work last week. So they've got to jump on it.
Yeah, if we had a couple pumps and motors sitting on the shelf right now, we'd be okay. We lose 1,000, I put one in there. You know, long term.
Well, the defective one, we sent that back, right? And we're gonna get I thought we talked about the SNOPs, they were gonna give us a replacement.
The 1,000 horse?
No, the 750, I think.
The 700?
Defective one?
No, they fixed it.
Yeah.
They fixed the issues and sent it back. Yeah. What we're running into is we just don't have spare pumps or motors to put in when something goes out. You know, a lot of the stuff the guys are doing in-house, bearing replacement, things like that. But anytime something has to come out or go out to Codell or somebody else, you lose one, we still have 3, not really a giant ordeal, we worry. But when we're down to 2, it's time to adjust.
Yeah, I'm prepared to move on this action, but let's bring it back to ops on the long-term plan and kind of like.
You'll probably start seeing us come to you guys more often to start asking for some extra pumps and motors. Ideally, in the long run, when all these stations being rebuilt, it would be kind of nice if we could kind of standardize pumps, or if we had one on the shelf that we could use in 2 or 3 stations, would be ideal. But that's not something we're going to get to in the next couple of years, I don't think. It's going to be a long-term process.
And I just hope, I mean, when you pay extra, you should be on time. So to this team, like, we're paying an additional fee to meet we want our expectations met, right? And not to make it confrontational, but again, when I'm paying extra surcharge for something, you meet my expectation. And that's across the board, whether it's this, pumps, or any service. That's what we would expect here at the board. Because otherwise, this is a waste of, frankly, our ratepayers' funds because it would come too late. And so, in fairness to them and the rates we just increased, we would expect that to be on time. And again, I'm not saying that to you, but I just...
No, I agree. And Rick from Codell, this guy's been great. You know, he knew that we had to take this to the board, and he was willing, hey, get me a verbal to get started, and let's get it going now, sooner than later. Now, if parts can't be delivered like he thinks they can, or what he tells them they can be delivered, that's a whole different ballgame. But I understand completely. We pay extra. But I think Rick, from talking to him, I think he's going to do everything he can to make this happen.
Well, I guess what I would tell you, too, is at some point midstream, if in 2 weeks from now or 6 days from now there becomes an issue in terms of some part not arriving on time, then we don't need to pay the overtime anymore. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
like the additional cost becomes irrelevant at that point because we're already beyond 4th of July to our busy season, right?
Yeah. So would you, if it was going to be a week late, would you want us to back away and just wait for another 3 weeks or 2 weeks?
I heard Aaron say that, you know, that you're still potentially going to the ERB even after 4th of July. So you're just narrowing, between the 6th and the 8th, you're just narrowing how long you're potentially going there.
Right, and I guess what I'm saying is,
not just the 4th.
Right, but now we have 26 days. I'm now paying an additional fee to have something delivered late. That rubs me wrong, I'm going to tell you. I think to just explain that to people in general, I think that would rub anybody wrong. And so, again, that would be my thought is to the dynamics just explained to me, an additional week is no, like, we have we have a mechanism to cover that in the event of that emergency. So we're now paying a premium to something we already have, kind of a mitigated strategy to solve. So is the additional cost a benefit? And I'm not going to say I wouldn't vote for it if that's the will of the board, but I'm just saying imposing that to the board at large. Because if that's, you see what I'm saying? We already
So far, every motor I've had rushed through them, they've been able to produce. Good luck with them. Using them for several years now.
Yeah, I understand completely what you're saying, and I agree. we're just kind of stuck at the will of the parts being delivered at this point, and we're just trying to do everything we can.
No comments. Yeah. I mean, we're dealing with it. And I think coming through ops back to the board to kind of the long-term strategy will kind of put this to bed probably, for the future, ideally, to kind of your stress level and your team as well.
Like I said, if we had extra pumps and motors sitting on the shelf right now, I think we'd be looking pretty good. Yeah, it's rebuilt everything.
Everything, including leak?
I believe so, yeah.
Rewinding.
Yeah, relining everything.
Okay, my sense was the cable coming in.
Yeah, now the original, the first quote for the 14,000, that was just to replace that cable. And then we had
Be replaced as part of this 83K?
yeah, everything should be new.
Expert?
Yeah. That's why he's here. Yeah, I'm not embarrassed.
Yeah, it's like we're covering all the bases we need to cover for this.
We are. If there was any question or we were taking a chance of having something of, I guess, sub-quality, you'd call it, we'd be talking about it. But the way this reads and the way he's been talking, everything will be brand new and ready to go and warranted.
I just have a question on the way that we monitor the performance of these pumps. Is there any way to kind of get a sense that these things are starting to go south on us ahead of time? Like,
At this time, we have over 30,000 hours on that particular motor without any big, repair. The industry standard is about 25,000, so we definitely got our money out of it.
okay.
So far.
But it's like, I guess in terms of our asset management, like when these things start bumping against those limits, I think for us, we just need to be ready to go. And
They send out reports every month on the way motors and pumps are running through. I think it's through skate, isn't it, Jeremy? Where we can see the pump runs, how long it runs, what it's all. Yeah, we have that already. Unfortunately, sometimes things just blow and we don't have a heads up, but that's one of the reasons why I think engineering is what created it, to kind of give us a heads up when we can start seeing things starting to fall off. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen for everything. You could get a power surge in some of these places and it could take something out, and you'd never know it until the power surge hit. But we are trying our best to make sure we can keep an eye on how everything's working and when it's starting to fail.
Any other questions?
I was going to say, just based on kind of the past performance of this motor team, I would say, my comments, I feel good just moving forward as is.
And another thing that we're facing, and I'm sure you guys all are, is they don't build things like they used to. I mean, just for instance, growing up, remember the refrigerator your mom had? That thing would last 30 to 50 years. You're not going to get 10 years now out of something like that. That goes all the way up to pumps and motors and everything else nowadays. So it's getting hard to get used to be honest with you.
The rebuild's probably going to end up being better than our new one.
We said the same thing, because you got a different company putting it together for us, and this is just a factory line, I guess you'd say.
Okay, any other discussion? Board members? What's desired action, Chris?
Number one, authorize an exception to competitive bidding procedures due to special circumstances. Number two, authorize a contract between the district and Codell Electric Supply for the rebuilding of a motor in the amount of $83,887.51 plus tax.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, board members? Any public comment on this? Let's call the question.
Thank you for understanding.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, that just takes us down to 6D. I am going to recuse from D and E due to my nephews being in those two units. So I'm going to leave the room and turn the gavel over to Shane.
Good afternoon, everybody. So earlier this year at the board's direction, Paul, Andrea, and I entered into contract negotiations with the local 39 union as their contract was set to expire on June 19th. And we're happy to report that we successfully negotiated a new contract with a 5-year term. And so today what we are looking for from the board is approval of the new union contract. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the process or the contract. There are any.
Just a quick reminder, and we'll talk about this in closed session. There's still the outstanding item of the compensation study, the completion of that. So that'll make the implementation of that will be negotiated once we have a good idea of what the data looks like.
So requested board action. Is to approve the union memorandum of understanding for the term of June 20th, 2024 through June 27th, 2029.
Any more comments, questions from the board? No. Any comments from the public? Seeing none?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Motion passes. Unanimous received.
On to
Okay. So just like the union, the contract, the management contract on the same cycle, so that contract was set to expire June 19th of this year. So again, Paul, Andrea, and I entered into those negotiations and successfully came to an agreement on a new management contract. So we're also seeking the approval of the new management contract with the vice chair. If there's any questions. So requested board action is to approve the management memorandum of understanding for the term of June 20th, 2024 through June 27th, 2029. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to item 7, standing and ad hoc committees. Let's start with Nick Exline.
Nothing for me.
no report.
No report here. All right, that was fast. Any board member reports?
I was just going to ask about, kind of additional community comments, 218, all those kind of things, but I think Ryan can address that in a second, so I'm good for right now.
All right, let's go to item 9A, Customer Assistance Program.
Good afternoon. I can start with that if you like. So update on community comments following the board's approval of the rate increases in the Prop 218 process. We have not heard a lot. So since then, we did a lot of outreach during the process. And I've said before, all the way through the end of it, I've been through a couple of these, last 2 at least here, and we had far more community engagement and comments coming through the customer service office during those 218 processes than we did this time. And this time around, we did by far the most outreach that we've ever done. We did quite a few email blasts and different things, different ways we were trying to get the word out to the customers. We were talking about it in the office, and we received fewer protests this time around. And so even following that board meeting where you voted on that, I was not at that meeting, but we really haven't. I was talking, we had a staff meeting in customer service this morning, and we're talking about this. We really haven't heard much, and overall during this 218 process, the feedback was not as critical as it had been in the past. Yeah. But we'll keep you posted. I expect that we will hear more once the new rates go into effect on July 1st. It seems like that always, once people see it, that tends to prompt them to call. So I'm curious whether we'll see that or not, but typically we do. Okay. So I wanted to give a staff report this afternoon on the Customer Assistance Program. As you remember, it's been about a month or so since we were talking about this, but as we were going through the Prop 218 process and looking at future rate increase needs, we were really looking at based on some of the feedback that we did receive. So I'll remind you that the most common feedback we did receive from people who submitted protests or who had called or emailed about this was that they were on a fixed income, typically retired, and that the rate increases were burdensome to them, but that they didn't meet the income requirements for our existing customer assistance program. So as you know, we partner with Liberty on that, and so anybody who wants to enroll in the program as it stands now has to first enroll in Liberty's CARE program. And I had reported the last time I gave this update that Liberty recently has done quite a lot to make the process of enrolling in their program less burdensome than it used to be. One of the major changes that they made is that you can enroll online. They process those within a week, and they have switched from, in the past, they did require kind of intensive income verification, W-2 and things like that. Now they currently don't. So they reserve the right to request that, but they are enrolling people in their CARE program based on just a self-certification that you meet the income requirements. The income requirements are statutorily tied to 200% of the federal poverty level. So that's actually codified in the PUC. So they just updated those, just to give you an idea of what that is right now, effective June 1st of 24, for a household of 1 to 2, the federal, that 200% of the poverty income limit has been increased. It went from like 38,000 to 40,800. So just under 41,000 for a household income of 1 to 2, 51,000 if you have 3, and 62,000 if you have a household of 4. So the context of today's, what I wanted to talk to the board about today is that we had been discussing kind of how we might be able to help some of these people who don't meet those income requirements, which based on the feedback that we've heard from quite a few people is that this income is lower than what you might have for 2 retired people that have some kind of, fixed income, Social Security or pension or something like that. So we did a lot of research, and I looked around at one of the things we had talked about was, looking at different income levels. So I did look through quite a bit of the census data, trying to see if we could get a handle on, the percentage, if we were looking at like an age-based in combination with income, something like that, it's challenging. So the data, it's kind of hard to nail that down. What we were looking for in particular is like what percentage of our local population would be, primary residences here over the age of 65 and kind of what those income levels are. And that was kind of hard to correlate. So I looked through the presentation, the TRPA data that you had mentioned, Nick. I looked at a bunch of stuff, and so it was kind of challenging to figure out what that kind of magic income limit would be. But as a reminder, some of the challenges with having an income-based program are that, how to handle that income verification. So we talked through the pros and cons of, like if we're using a self-certification, obviously people could self-certify that they meet the requirements without actually meeting the requirements. The biggest hurdle to us basically doing the income verification is in the PCI compliance laws that govern how our technology is set up in order to store that information. So right now, we don't work with any kind of Social Security numbers. We don't use that. A lot of private utilities do. They'll use that for deposits or, credit checks, things like that. But we don't use that, and we don't store anything that has that level. There are various levels of personal information, but any income information or Social Security numbers is in the highest level. So essentially, in order to store that on our servers in any format, they have to meet the certain compliance requirements, and right now we don't. And so we've worked with IT, and the short story is it'd be very expensive to comply, so that's something that we're trying to avoid, is doing our own income verification. So we're trying to essentially balance, how can we help the people that we want to help and kind of expand our assistance into this this market where they need it, but they don't meet the qualifications for the current program. So I looked around at one of the other options we talked about was a strictly age-based program, something like a senior discount. We actually have quite a few people who call and ask about this on a day-to-day basis. If we have a senior discount, we always mention the care discount and the requirement, and they often say that they don't meet those income requirements. So I looked around. This is relatively uncommon as far as a senior discount and utilities. There are some places who are doing it. I saw they're all doing it kind of different ways. I've seen 10% discounts. I've seen discounts that pertain to a certain amount of consumption on the metered side. So they'll say you get a 10% discount on the first 10 units consumed in a month, something like that. So that's really what we wanted to talk to the board about, is in trying to find this balance of, how we can kind of, keep our existing program, but maybe create a new assistance program, what your appetite would be for something like that, an age-based program where we're not doing income verification. We could still have a self-certification if we wanted to on the form, and I think we should. Something like that the program is really designed for people who are on a fixed income where the bill is a hardship to them. And so at least they would be self-certifying that they meet that program, so that we would be at least marketing it, that the program is not for everybody who's over that age, but it's really the spirit of it is, to reach people who are having a hard time paying the bill as the rates increase. As a reminder, any kind of assistance that we give like this is offset by non-rate revenue. So Prop 218 requires that we collect all of the rate revenue from everybody the same. So if we do this, we have funded the customer assistance program in the past with property tax revenue. We can do that. And currently, customer assistance program is about $150,000 a year. If we open this, something like this, based on the census data, it's hard to tell. It's about 15 to somewhere around 16% of the population, it looks like, based on that data, is over the age of 65. But we would require that the property that they're getting the discount on be their primary residence. So it's hard to say what the impact would be. But another thing that I've seen quite a lot of, especially around the lake with people who have a low-income assistance program similar to ours, they all kind of partner with the local electrical, is that they have funded it to a certain maximum. That is something that we always could consider, and we could do that at any time in the future. If we were to roll out a new program, we could see what the enrollment looks like and what the impact is to that property tax revenue. You could always establish a maximum to fund that to. It seems like that is mostly what I'm seeing as far as anyone who has an assistance program. They'll fund it to a certain amount per year. And then after that, nobody else is able to enroll. That is an option in the future. But I really just wanted to get some feedback from the board today on whether you'd be interested in doing something like that, an age-based discount program that would reach some of these people. And it would be, if we do it that way, kind of minimally impactful on the administrative side. So I'm just looking for some discussion feedback. What do you think?
I like the concept. I think some kind of age-based fixed income type solution, maybe capping it at 100K. I don't know what the numbers might say, but I'm thinking that the reality is there's probably not a lot of people that are going to take advantage of this. But I think for us, it's probably a good kind of card to play and put out there for folks and make it available to them, especially those that we heard come out to the workshops and really say this is really another burden on us with everything else that's going up. So I guess for me, I like the concept of an age-based and maybe capping it at 100K. Age-wise, I think I don't really have a good sense of that, but I think maybe 65 and over. I don't really know. I would like to base it on some kind of data or some statistics of some sort, but I think for me that's it's an appealing proposal that you put forward. And,
yeah, no, I really appreciate the hard work and looking into it. I think to your questions, the self-certification, given with what Liberty's doing, doesn't really, and just the nexus between the additional security cost meets admin, meets what you're actually, I just don't think it probably pencils in the end as well to do it any other way. And so that makes sense to me. 65, 67, I'm not sure, to your point, like what you would tie that to. But whatever's the logical age, I think the self-certification, is a good idea to get, and I don't know how we would do this, but I would like to have a clause where, it could be revoked. How would I say this? I could drive by your house and I would know, right? And so it's a very small community, and so kind of in that reality, and not that we would do that, but you know what I'm saying, just to allow in case there could be some egregious cases, but I don't want to put that over everybody. But, I'm with Shane. I think it's a good idea. I like the idea of the cap, so it's manageable. And so I think in terms of, as we're looking for, the people that actually came out and spoke throughout this process and processes before, it's a great idea.
I would agree with what both Nick and Shane voiced. And like you said, that Liberty does, it has the self-certification, but it reserves the right to ask. So that might be something that could, people.
We have that language in our current application for the customer assistance program. It says exactly that. Basically, that we can revoke it if we have reason to believe that are no longer qualified, and you'll have to reapply. And it also says we reserve the right at any time to request documentation verifying that you meet the requirements. So we would have that in this new program too.
So good job. It sounds like you did this thorough.
So I'm going to be the odd man out. I support the low-income program that we already have, that parrots Liberty, and that they have a qualification process. And it's basically, if you're on whatever the current version of food stamps is, if you're on some public assistance, you can get our discount program. And they qualify them, and then that makes them qualified for us too. I support that because regardless of what age you are, you can access that program. I don't like an age-based program because you would sweep up too many well-to-do old people, and I know a lot of them. There's a lot of them in Tahoe, and I don't think that's necessary. I think anybody that's old or young that needs our assistance program can access it.
Right. I'll just chime in. I agree with Dave, actually. I'm not that supportive of an age-based, because I think it does, your numbers may be too high almost automatically. And so, I was really supportive of the income-based. I was pushing that pretty hard last time because I think there's a segment of our population that's not going to show up to meetings and protest rates and other things. And, I think we have a role to acknowledge that segment of our community. And I think, if we want to pick up the fixed income folks, then is there a way to adjust, just because we're using the Liberty system and that's pegged to PUC regulation of 200 over the federal poverty limit, could we create our own threshold number? I'm just thinking that may be a place to go. And then having the self-certification. I know that's challenging, but because I agree, I don't want to spend money updating our IT to, house sensitive information. But I just feel pretty strongly about the income level where we could pick up the fixed income as well as some of lower income populations of our community. Would you prefer a combination age-based and fixed income, or just a higher income? Just a higher income to pick up that. I think the age-based, I totally agree with Dave. The thing was rattling through my brain is our community. I know if you look through that demographic data, our community has completely changed over in the last 15 years, and it is older than ever. And so more and more of our community is now probably going to qualify for that. And I don't think they necessarily need it, nor should that be who we're targeting. We should be targeting folks on fixed income, like we heard, as well as our underserved and low-income population.
I think that's a point. Because I'm looking at this a lot of different ways, right? To fairness of everything you just said. Would you be able to, two individuals, 67 years old, on a fixed income that getting into the self-verification process, I think that does give us some leeway, right, in terms of what we would set that at. And so I wouldn't be opposed to, you know, if you could establish what that would be. I think that tackles the same problem and avoids, in fairness, some of the challenges you put forward. Yeah. You know, I think it's just a way of tackling it, and you would catch that group. And what I would look at too, I'd still be in favor of a cap. And could you just, I apologize, could you remind what was the currently for the assistance program? What is it annually?
So currently, yeah, we have about 400 accounts enrolled, and right now, so this was on the old rate. It's been about 150,000 a year, and yeah, and so we'll expect. I mean, that will increase as the rates increase, and we expect that there will be more people enrolled in that program, but not substantially. I wouldn't think it would.
150K lost revenue as a result of the program?
Essentially, from the property taxes. So 150,000 from property taxes moved into rate revenue to supplement that discount. But you're right. So this is another option, that idea of if we, as long as we do the self-certification, so we're not doing that income verification and keeping those, we can do something like that, establish, you know, some income level and basically have both programs, like if you qualify for Liberty, you can have the discount, or if you don't, but you fall under this household income limit, we could do something like that. It's really just balancing that, you know, not doing the verification for it. And so if you're okay with that self-certification, we totally can do something like that.
I'm okay with the self-certification. I think it's pretty common these days, and if you can show some sort of follow-up on it very sporadically, I mean, obviously enforcement's very costly, but you just have to kind of send a message, and I don't think the impact of the program would be super egregious.
And what we do as far as follow-up, we actually, anytime we have a mailing address change, so if somebody's enrolled in the program and they change their mailing address from an address in town to an address in Walnut Creek or something like that, we actually will reach out to them. And sometimes that's another person who's sending those to their child who's going to help them pay it, and that's fine. But we do follow up on things like that. We also require that they reapply every 2 or 3 years. And so at least then they would have to recertify that they still meet the requirements. And Liberty does the same thing.
Yeah, just restate, I like having Liberty be the gatekeeper and not us.
There are big benefits to that.
You know, whatever their limits are, whatever their requirements are, have them do it. And if it gets through their screen, then we're good with it. Yeah.
And yeah, I think the long-standing perks for that is that they really did do all the administrative side, and so it was simple for us. I think the only downside to it that we're seeing now is that their income levels, we're hearing from people who say that they don't qualify. But they don't qualify for that program?
Yeah. If you don't qualify, you don't qualify.
I think the cost of living, though, here does not track with the annual median income of nationwide. It's bottom line. So we need to pick up, I think, a little bit more that for families that are struggling. And I'm not talking about the fixed income folks necessarily either. I'm talking about families that are barely making it, you know.
What is our property tax revenue?
Greg said it was around 12 million. Does that sound right? 10 or 12 million? Does it?
I mean, yeah, it's pretty close. Yeah.
I'll just give you my punch list. So I'm 4H-based, fixed income, capped, and that's kind of where I'm coming in. So if you can find a solution around that. And I'm not talking about massive discounts. I'm talking about maybe 5%. Something, just give them a break.
Oh, okay.
I'm not talking, on bananas here. I just want to, give them a little bit of a break.
And currently, the CARE program that is administered through Liberty, that's 25%?
Our discount is 25, yeah. And the board actually increased that in 2019. So it used to be 20%, and we increased it during the last Prop 218 process to 25. So that's something else that I didn't talk about. If we're going to run this as a separate program, you could have a different discount amount.
That's what I'm thinking. It would be like something that would be above and beyond for that older group that's on fixed income. and that they would be self-certified. I like that concept. I don't want to get all administrative on these folks. I want to make it easy.
And you would think, like a 10% discount? Or?
Again, 5%, I think that'd be reasonable. Some.
5%, it's not worth anybody's time. Our time administering the program, the people's time filling out the info. I just think, you know, looking at average bills and stuff, that would be like $20.
It may already be taking advantage of the CARE
Right.
program on top of that, so it'd be another 5% on top of the CARE program.
For our rate?
For the people that would.
What you're saying is that people would qualify for, go through Liberty, they'd get the 25% off, and then get an additional?
If they meet kind of that, kind of older fixed income category.
I'm all for our own program, because it's, I don't know, I think it's worth us having a little bit more control of that, I don't know.
And then if you mean break away from.
Yeah, I mean, if we're getting administrative value out of them filling out the CARE program information and hitting just a button, like a checkbox to submit it to us, then that's one thing. But if we're beholden to some of the CARE program requirements and things that don't allow us to do some of these things we're talking about, then we may need to do our own thing. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and we can do our own thing and completely kind of, sever those ties with Liberty, or we could do a supplement, something like it could even be under the same program, but 2 ways to qualify.
Yeah, push them towards the basic qualification of the CARE program, but if they're above that, there's like a second step or something.
Yeah, exactly. It would be like 2 ways to qualify for our customer assistance program. Either you're on Liberty's CARE or you meet these requirements. I like that only because there's value in, a lot more people are familiar with the CARE program. So now that we're partnered with Liberty on sharing data with them, so we will get the list of everybody who's enrolled in their program so that we can do some targeted outreach and get them enrolled in ours if they qualify on CARE. So there are benefits, I think, to that, to keeping that portion and maybe supplementing it.
I would say too, like, I think in terms of percentage of property tax to, it's a really small percentage of what we're getting out, right? Like, the tithing's a little, I would say, like, in terms of percentage thinking. So in that, I think Nick's probably swayed me a little bit. I think Dave as well comment. Yeah, I mean, I could see a lot of older individuals with grass that looks like Augusta getting into this, and so I would go with the income base based on some rational level, and then I would also throw in another, we wouldn't necessarily do some of these things, but I would include, like, for example, like insurance things now, they're like, we're going to do a drive-by your house and stuff like that. I think, as far as I know, these people will never come by, right? But that, you have to get rid of that trampoline because we could drive by at some point in your backyard, right? So you get rid of it whether you know they're going to come by or not. I think just having some things like that kind of, make people think twice in a mild way before being disingenuous. And then setting a cap would be probably my suggestion to, like, bring it forward. And I think, as well, not going with age, I think to Nick's point further, as I think about it more, I think it's a great point because there's a lot of people that fall in that space. And if you just look at where this is going to go from where it is, the percentage of people, the number of people that are actually joined, if you logically think about it, it's going to be a pretty small group. But it does give a lifeline to those individuals that did come speak to us and an option to give them for a tiny percentage of our property tax.
So Ryan, you kind of like the idea of continuing with the CARE program, but then maybe adding the second layer, and that wouldn't cause undue administrative.
I don't think so.
On your staff.
Right, because we could, it would be basically the same program. There are different ways to do this, but that wouldn't, I don't think, bring a lot of extra work to us, especially if we do the self-certification. I think that would be fine. Then we have basically 2 different routes to qualify for our assistance program. One thing that we could do that is more work, but if we were going to have a separate program, we would consider having a separate rate code for discounts. It just comes down to whether or not we'd want to track these groups separately, and I don't know that we would. If we do it that way, basically 2 routes, and the discount's going to be the same 25%, 2 ways to qualify, either through Liberty or meeting our requirements, we could all put them in one bucket, basically, or if you wanted to track them differently to find out how many of these people are, qualified under this other qualification, we may be able to, track that.
And Dave, what are you thinking? You just want to just stick with how it is? That's...
I guess I like the way it is, but with the modification, if we wanted to up the income thing, I just know people too well. You go down to Gardnerville, and there's a food bank down there, and the line of cars going in and out of there weekly there's nice cars going in, and most of them are nice cars. That people, if you offer them a discount, they're going to clip that coupon. They're going to clip that coupon, and you say, there's no proof required. You just self-certify, hand in this thing, and you get 25% off your sewer bill. People are going to do it. I don't have that faith in my fellow man that a lot of you guys do. I think the number will build too. It tends to start low, but then neighbors talk, hey, all you got to do to get this 25% off is send in this thing. Well,
we're talking about
that. And so, it'll build through time. People just aren't fundamentally honest on those kind of things. So, I'm a little, I like the CARE program, having to adhere to that, because that's harder. But I'll entertain, next idea.
What happens when you bring it to the board?
It's a great discussion.
We're giving him no direction.
We're making you work for it.
I've been bringing this up since, the first day I was here, kudos to you for getting here, baby. That's huge. So I'm very excited.
And I think to these tweaks, would make tweaks in Dave's consideration. And that's why I think in terms of that language, again, using that trampoline, because, it's my fire insurance, I had to get rid of a trampoline. And my wife made me do that the first weekend after we did. I was like, no one's coming by and looking in her backyard, but it was gone, right? And so just little things like that, I think, to check Dave's point. And then if we put, a cap on it, and then we could do further kind of evaluations in terms of, you see the things gain game. We start changing things, maybe it's multifamily, get other options. Or, we can be creative if we start to get game. So I would say, if, you or your team starts to see, oh, Jesus, this just doubled. You know what I mean? Updates would be great. But other than that, I think this is a great space to be in. I think I really appreciated the discussion from the board today and kind of the drafting of it.
Yeah, I do too. I think. So let us go back to the drawing board, and we will put together a proposal and bring it back for consideration. Just kind of let you know what I'm thinking after hearing all this. Having basically a second tier, and say, for example, instead of 200%, it's 300% as federal income. And if you're in that higher income threshold, I do think the discount should be less than the 25. I think the 25 should be reserved for the lowest of the income, and then it could go step down from there. So yeah, let us work on it, and we'll bring something back in 2 weeks.
And I think I like that suggestion. Sorry for jumping back in, but because, if you look at our rate increases, maybe it's 15%, and can arbitrate now. But I think that seems reasonable. And then you'd set it at 300% at whatever, you back check whatever you would think kind of 2 people on fixed incomes would be, kind of work the percentage back from that. No, I think that makes sense to me.
So here's my bullets. You ready?
Yep.
So it's capped.
I already said the bullets.
It's capped. It's residents only, right? Basically relates to low/fixed income. I like the whole notion of having a little extra for those that are kind of an age-based, kind of our population that's aging, and then the self-certification piece.
What is the age base getting at?
it's just getting at those folks that are retired. And I mean, it lends itself to the whole fixed income side of things.
I don't want to get into like an age war here, but I feel much worse for I feel a different empathy for my Gen Z employees than I do for the retirees of this community. Like, they got a house, I have family that bought a house here for like $25K. Do you know what I mean? Like, I got a crap car for more than $25K my first car out. Do you see my point? Like, there's dynamics where my employees can't afford a place to buy here and have trouble renting, so they live in Reno and so forth. So, and that's why I think, where I thought about that after Nick's comment, I think that was really important.
Picking it up with the income.
Yeah.
Shy away from age and having anything to do with solely on income, because you're hopefully picking up, because you may have a fixed income that's huge, you know? Like,
I guess I'm thinking more like Social Security dependent or something like, to that
so you're
extent.
picking it up at the end.
Okay, that's fine, yeah.
Even with Social Security, there's choices. You retire at 62, and your Social Security is pretty low. Retire, save it until 70, and it's a little higher. So there's choices. Hey, I want to punch out early. I'm going to punch out at 62, easy street, and then claim hardship because your Social Security is so low. Well, I have a hard time feeling sorry for somebody if they do that. So there's always nuances. Okay.
Yeah, good talk. Thank you. We'll be back. I think I've got the right idea.
Okay, let's go to Keith's training, Senate Bill 1439.
Before you start real quick, I know we have a time-sensitive discussion taking place in closed session. That's what I was curious. I mean, I know we need to get to this because it's related to elections, but if we wait 2 weeks, that's probably okay, I'm guessing. Okay. Yeah.
Carry it over? All right, very good. Then let's go to the GM report. You want to do that now? Or you want to, no report? That's awesome. All right. Let's
We're doing our KPIs.
Past and future meetings are in the agenda, and with that, let's go into closed session.
Okay, coming out of closed session with one item to report. Keith?
During closed session, the board gave direction to the general manager to enter into a legal services agreement with the law firm of Richards, Watson, and Gershon.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.